Whew. Hey, sorry. I know that's Bourbon Moth's thing, and just consider it an homage to one of my favorite woodworkers, but I won't do it again. It's his thing. Again, just an homage. So anyway, I don't know if you're a subscriber to the channel. If not, you should be. Or if you just searched sheetrock, or how to install sheetrock or insulate, or I don't know how you found the channel, but either way, hey, thanks for joining me. This is just a quick video that I made documenting the struggles or the process or whatever you want to call it that I went through to insulate and cover the walls in this garage. So this is a 2-car garage here at the house. It's been just open studs since we moved in about 7 years ago, and I want to convert it to a dedicated wood shop, and as such, I need it to be insulated so that I can put a mini split up there, because again, I live in Southeast Texas and it's freaking hot down here. So I can't woodwork in here with it that hot. And yeah, that's really it. So hopefully you enjoy the video. Finally got a mic so I can do live audio like this, and hopefully it sounds better. And at the end of the day, just trying to make some better videos and keep improving both on video editing, video recording, and woodworking. So here's the video. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a woodworker who doesn't own a truck. I know, it's ridiculous, but nonetheless, it is true. So I went down to my local Lowe's and rented one of their trucks, which by the way is a really great deal. $20 for like an hour and a half. It's perfect. And while I was down there renting that truck, I went ahead and grabbed a few bundles of R30 insulation that I'm going to use for the ceiling, a couple of rolls of the R13 2x4 insulation, and 12 sheets of sheetrock, which ultimately ends up being about a 2 foot by 4 foot piece short. And I don't know if you've bought sheetrock recently, but you can't just buy a 2 foot by 4 foot sheet or a 4 foot by 4 foot sheet. You've got to buy either an entire sheet or one of those little 2 foot by 2 foot squares. So here is some 2-inch R10 foam insulation sheets, and you're probably wondering, why do you need that? Well, this is why. The people who framed this house back in 1980 framed it on diamond marks, as opposed to 16-inch centers as most things are today. And so what that means for me is the insulation, which only comes in 16-inch or 24-inch, is 2 inches too small. So the whole purpose of the foam is that I can fur out each joist by ripping the foam into 6-inch strips, and I'll have something to nail the insulation to. And the way I see it is, if it's R10 at 2 inches, then 6 inches should give me R30, which is the same as the craft face insulation. And yeah, I mean, in my head, that makes total sense. So the easiest way I could figure to cut this foam was to use a table saw. So all I did was put my Jessom stock guides onto the fence and use that to kind of hold the foam down, because it definitely wants to kind of walk on you when you run it through the table saw. And as you can see, I finally got a dust collection system in the shop, thank goodness. But I just ran all of the foam through and made a bunch of these little 6-inch strips. And obviously, these aren't really holding any weight, so all I did was take a few 3-inch screws per piece, put one in the middle and one on each end, and proceeded to fur out every joist in the entire garage, which, by the way, took me a lot longer than I really thought it was going to take. But I did get it finished. Had to cut around a couple of little weird bracing pieces that were jutting down into the joist, so the foam really was the best option in my opinion than trying to fur it out with a 2x, which was only 1.5 inches, so I'd still be short. So again, this was like the best solution I could come up with. And then that was it. Once I had the foam up, I just kind of made my way around the entire garage and used a pneumatic stapler to throw the insulation in there. Now what you'll see me do here in just a second is what I had to do on a few pieces is I took packing tape and I first adhered it to the paper of the insulation, and then I taped that to the foam because it was just barely too short to really reach all the way to the foam. But then I stapled the tape to the foam, and here in a few seconds you'll see that I got a little nervous about that too and didn't think that was really going to hold very well. So I ended up going back over each section with some string, and yep, you can see it here, and I just crisscrossed it between the joist all the way around. And I just felt like that was a little bit more secure. It made me feel a lot better that all of this insulation and all this hard work wasn't going to fall, and I wasn't going to have to come back later and redo it. So here you're seeing me take down my 2 garage door openers. I don't need them. I don't need an automatic door in a wood shop, so I went ahead and got rid of those. And then you also will notice that I finally realized, hey, dummy, you've got scaffold in your workbench that's on wheels. So I switched from going up and down the ladder multiple times to only using the ladder to get to the scaffold. And this made it so much easier, so much easier. And yeah, that's pretty much it. As you can see in the background, it's nighttime by the time I'm finished, so it took me all day and most of the night to get about 95% done with the insulation. And this was the result. 95% of the way done. Like I said, there's a few pieces at the front that you can see in this shot right here, and I'll install that when I put the sheetrock up. So the next day I ran over to Lowe's. Again, don't have a truck, so I used my wife's SUV, and I rented a panel lift because I was going to be hanging sheetrock on the ceiling, and if you've ever done that without a panel lift, you'll know how ridiculous it is. And again, being able to rent tools from Lowe's a mile away is amazing. So anyway, this panel lift was like $30 for 24 hours. Come on. It's worth every penny, I promise you. And by the way, it's really easy to put together. It comes in pieces. I picked it up once in my car and used it for a few hours a while back, and it fit right in the trunk. So it's very convenient, and it makes hanging sheetrock on the ceiling a breeze. Highly recommended. And yeah, that was it. And thankfully everything in my shop is on wheels, including the saw stop. I definitely sprang the extra cash for the mobile base, and totally worth it because I've moved that thing 100 times since it's been in there. And pretty much just made my way around the garage, hanging sheetrock. This is pretty self-explanatory. And like I said a minute ago, there I am just re-insulating those little pieces at the front right before I do the sheetrock in this section. And again, being able to just throw a whole sheet of sheetrock onto the panel lift, jack it up to the ceiling, get it exactly the where you want it, and then screw it in without having to worry about holding it and dropping screws and all the other stuff, it's just worth every penny that it costs to rent that thing. So what you're looking at here is a bracket for the garage rails, because I needed to take the garage rail bracket down. As you can see in this shot here, you can still see pieces of the old sheetrock when I ripped it down. It's still stuck in between the garage bracket, or the garage rail bracket, and the ceiling. And I didn't want to throw off the operation of the garage by getting that rail out of whack. So I just braced it up real quick off the studs, held it in place, pulled the lag screws out, and then put the new sheetrock in. And not to belabor a point, but this right here is a perfect example of why this panel lift is worth every penny. Because imagine trying to hold that sheet of sheetrock with 2 people up on the ceiling, around the garage door rail and the wood rack, trying to get it just right. It's ridiculous. So this was so much easier. And as you can see, I get it close, and then I'm able to kind of budge and yank on the panel lift a little bit and wiggle it right into place. And here, this is the same thing. I had to remove the 2 center brackets, so I just fashioned up a quick brace out of some old scrap 2x4 I had laying around just to hold those garage rails in place. And then I took measurements on this piece of scrap sheetrock here of all of the lag screws from existing or known points, like the sheetrock that was there installed and the staircase. That way I could put the leg screws right back exactly where they were. I wouldn't have to worry about boring out the hole or creating a new hole. Probably not that big of a deal, probably would have been okay, but you know, like any other woodworker, I like to overdo things, and it ended up being okay for me. And even right here, I marked out the braces on the ground just in case, you know, I bumped into it and it moved. I just didn't want there to be any variation of where the rails went back in to where they were before I took the brackets down. Because again, the garage doors worked just fine. So that was my method. And then I went and I marked all of the places where I was going to use the lag bolts. And then all I had to do was kind of raise the garage rail bracket back up against the sheetrock. And what do you know? It lined up exactly. And just the same thing here. Another little bracket braced up off the wall to hold that rail in place. And of course, notice the fan because again, it's freaking hot in Southeast Texas. And I worked for about 14 hours on this garage ceiling in order to get it finished. It was ridiculous, between taking the garage door openers down, removing the rail brackets to get to those pieces of sheetrock, adding the other insulation, all the things that I had to do. It just took forever, but it turned out great. All right, well, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like I said, lots of work to do in the garage still. I've got to trim it out. I've got to paint it. I've got to tape and float the ceiling because even though it's a wood shop, I want it to look nice. I've still got to insulate the garage doors, but those will be more videos to come at a later date. And like I said, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that. And leave me comments down below if you have any questions or just want to say, hey, this was a stupid video. All right then, thanks.